wherever you're coming from, if you're somebody who gets a chance to work in ministry, embrace the privilege, the fact that daily mass and prayer and other things like that can be part of your life and your routine. That's a gift.
I'd love to know a bit about your faith journey. Are you a cradle Catholic? Are you a convert? Are you a revert? Where are you in that journey, Mike?
So I was born in Halifax. I was born over on the East Coast, and so my parents took me to church to be baptized on September 21st, 1980. My bishop, Archbishop Smith, always asks when he's in different places, like, "Do you know the date of your baptism?" So I had to go back and look it up, and I try and remember it as much as I can. So that would be where my faith started. I would say that it kind of puttered out on me as I kind of got into my early teens. Our family went to church most Sundays, but I learned rather quickly that if I slept in long enough, I could usually avoid it, or at least some of the time I could avoid it.
Oh, geez,
And
what age did you start using the sleep technique?
probably 8 or 9 years old.
Yeah, yeah,
The
yeah.
ridiculous part looking back on that is that the times I tried the sleep technique, generally it meant I would lay awake in bed for more than 2 hours, and mass, generally speaking, is like an hour long. So, I think my sense of time and valuation was not exactly what it should have been. Around the time I was 15, my parish hired a youth minister. And so one of the Sundays I happened to be in church, she was up and introducing herself. And her arrival at my parish coincided with the breakup of my family. And I'd been
Mm.
looking really for a place to belong. And I often will say, even to this day, I'm a jack of all trades and a master of none. And so I'm not somebody who was terribly athletic. So I was never on any sports teams. I tried out and didn't tend to make the first cut. As much as I have a deep love for music, I can't read music. So for the instrumental band program, that was not really a great place for me. And, I tried all these different things. And again, I couldn't find a place where I fit. And I remember vividly sitting as my youth minister, Tracy, was introducing herself for the first time. I remember thinking to myself, they can't cut me here. It's the church. Jesus says something about that. And and so I went. I went to the first gathering, as she was sort of trying to lay the seeds for what our youth ministry would be. I remember being really sold on it when I saw the proportion of guys to girls, because there were two of us who were regulars who were guys, and a whole lot of young ladies. And I thought, there was great potential for, a future relationship here. Not
Primo teenage boy thinking for sure.
Yeah, it didn't work out despite my best efforts. But in the midst of me not going at all, I wasn't going because I was on this great big search for meaning in life, or I had great deep questions about God. I had really every other reason to be there other than faith. But it's funny, yeah, I did find the family that I was looking for in this youth group, but I also found that this was the place that Jesus, I would say, like, it's like he came off the page.
Mm.
I'd always kind of regarded the stories of the Gospels like any other great story that you read. And to me, Jesus was a great character who made a great sacrifice. But then again, so did Spock in Star Trek 2, and so did, Anakin Skywalker in Return of the Jedi, and, so does Gandalf in Lord of the Rings. Jesus is just another one of those characters. I didn't realize that these were, it was the reverse. These are written almost as reflections of what Jesus was like. But to me, it was just another one of those stories.
Hmm.
And as I kind of progressed through the youth group, and we were challenged to do things like pray every day, this was an earth-shattering concept to me. Go to confession even when you're not about to celebrate some other major sacrament. Uh, these little things made Jesus come off the page and become a real person. And I would say that was really the turning point in my life, because that's where Jesus became not just a character in a story, but my dearest friend. And really everything I've done since has been a response to that knowledge, that relationship, that friendship, and the fact that I found home and family that I had lost in my faith.
Yeah. At what age would you say like you felt that fire lit up in you?
I was 16 years old. It's funny. She was only our youth minister for about a year, maybe just shy of 2 years, because she
Mhm.
she she joined us, in the winter of 1995. She got married in December of 1995, and then she had her first child in the fall of 96, went on mat
Mm.
leave, and that was it. But that year and a half that we were with her,
Mhm.
there's several of us who are still very actively involved in the church,
Oh, that's
who all
powerful.
came as fruits of that ministry.
Yeah. So when you at 15, you obviously feel the pull of Christ, you feel that fulfillment of the Holy Spirit. What did you do with that energy? Because it's one thing to have it and feel it, but then there's another thing to do things with it. Like I'm a bit of a revert, and when I felt that full first pull of Christ, it's like I couldn't sleep. I'm walking around. It's like 5 a.m. And I'm just like, okay, what do you want me to do with this? I don't know what to do with this. Like for yourself at 15 years old, what did you do with it?
Well, I would say there was a couple of things. I didn't really know how to pray. So when I would sit and pray, I just think of everybody I knew, and I would, I had a list, all of my friends, all of the ones who were dating, and you pray for their relationship, you'd pray for all of these things. So part of it was, just trying to fumble my way through those early days of prayer.
Mhm.
Uh, when I went on a retreat with Tracy at one point in time, and I hadn't been to confession since confirmation, so it had been 4 or 5 years since my last confession, and
Yeah.
I'd never thought of it. I'd never thought to go. And I got in line for confession, and then lunch rolled around, and as I was the next one to go into the confessional, the priest got up and left for his lunch break. And I'm like, oh, well, I guess, so much for that. I wasn't really that upset about not having to go and talk about the things, I was a little bit embarrassed especially, when you're out of the habit of it. But heck, I don't love going to confession now. I mean, I love the feeling coming out of confession, but I don't love going to confession now.
Yes, yes.
And
It's that weight we're walking into that line with us.
yeah, yeah. Walking out, though, nothing like it.
Nothing like it.
And so, I went home. I never got a chance to go to confession on that retreat. And the next Saturday, one of the girls from the youth group showed up with her mom. And you don't say no to her mom. Like
Mm.
Suzanne, this girl's mom is just you never say no to things. So it was like you're coming to confession.
Hmm.
And she handed me a rosary. And somehow in my 15 years, I don't remember ever at that point in time, or 16 years, I don't remember ever having learned the rosary.
Okay.
So I fumbled my way through that a little bit. Somebody gave me one of those little blue Mysteries of the Rosary books, and I
Yep.
fumbled my way
Yep.
through that. So one of the things that I did was, I fumbled. I fumbled my way through a lot of stuff that I'd never experienced, I'd never done before. But I was like a sponge, just soaking it in. The other thing was I spent as much time at the church with the youth group as I possibly could. So we had a music ministry. So I bought a guitar, learned how to play guitar. Wasn't very good. They kind of put up with me more but again, it was the church, they had to. We had a drama team that would do skits at our youth nights. So I would go, Monday I would go for music practice. Tuesday I would go for the skit practice. Wednesday we had a Bible study after school. So I'd bike over to the church and I'd be there for the Bible study. I don't think we had anything on Thursday because I think Tracy actually took a night off. And then
Mhm.
Friday, was our youth nights. And then we'd have, often we do music for a mass on Sunday. So I'd be there 4, 5, 6 days a week. And
Wow.
like I say, this became my circle of friends. This became the people
Your
that I cared
community.
about.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Eventually it led me to go to a summer camp. That was where I started spending my summer. And I was all in like a sponge, and give me something that I can sign up for, and I'll try it out. You want me to go plant a flower bed at the new hospice that we're opening? I don't know anything about flowers. Okay, I'll go. They quickly took me off that when they realized I have no skills of plants whatsoever, but I was all in, all in.
That well, that's beautiful. The fact that at that age to feel that pull and to say yes and continually say yes, and that's something that a lot of people struggle with. That's I'm a grown man, and there's still times struggling with that yes. So to hear that at 15, so on fire, that you were, yeah, just all in, that's amazing. As you progress through high school, eventually I know you did some schooling. Where did you go? What did you study? And how did your faith play a role in kind of discerning where to go and what to do?
The Charismatic Renewal had opened a Bible school in northern Alberta in the mid 1980s. So
Mm.
a number of the young adults from my youth group ended up going there. As actually Tracy's husband became the associate director there. That was
Okay.
where she ended up moving to this little town called Radway. And so a bunch of our young adults went through, and it was fascinating to me watching the difference between them when they left and the confidence that they came back with. And I thought to myself, I could use a year in community. I could
Mm.
do this again. Family, this desire for the family that I'd lost was probably one of my most driving motivations, and the family of faith really being this secure place I could go back to. And so when I graduated from high school, I basically signed up for the next 4 years with two different groups. I signed up with this Bible school, and then I signed on with a summer camp called Camp St. Louis, which is the camp that's owned by the Diocese of St. Paul. And I'd spend my summers at camp, and I'd spend my winters at the Bible school for about 4 years. And what this did for me was this took that, I would say, that teenage enthusiasm that I'd had when I was involved in the youth group, and it grounded it.
Mm.
Instead of fumbling for prayer, now I knew the rosary, and I prayed it with people on a regular basis.
Yeah.
I introduced the liturgy of the hours. I really, I wasn't just fumbling on the guitar anymore. Now I could actually get up and I could lead a campfire. I could lead music for mass. I could do these different things.
Hmm.
And so that was a wonderful experience. Made some really great dear friends along the line. Found some priests, some mentors. Cardinal Collins, who recently retired in Toronto,
Yes.
was was someone I got to spend a fair bit of time with because he taught at the Bible school, but he also, my first summer, he was our bishop in St. Paul. This was his first diocese, and because our
Okay.
parish priest was awaiting quadruple heart bypass surgery, he actually drove up and said mass for us twice a week.
Oh
And so
wow.
we're this little camp, with 40 or 50 kids out there, and we've got the bishop for mass twice a week and for confession every week, and uh, it was just such a wonderful experience because I had no idea that there you have a distance between you and the bishop. I mean, it was just he was just there and he was joking with us and eating meals with us and became, I would say, somebody pretty important because he was one who gave me confidence when I finished up that cycle of 4 years and I came back to the Archdiocese of Edmonton and got a job as a youth minister myself in a parish. Because what I wanted more than anything, having looked back on my own life, having looked back on kind of these teenage years when I needed someone and I needed something to be there, and my parish hired Tracy. I wanted to offer that opportunity to others. And camp ministry is wonderful, but you get kids for a week in the summer, and there's nothing quite like journeying with somebody week in and week out over time and watching them grow and
Mhm.
flourish in their own faith.
Yeah, and that's such an important period to be able to impact kids while they're in high school. And the work that you do now, you're the chaplain for the Evergreen School District. Did I say that one correct?
Evergreen Catholic Separate School Division is the official title, but
Ah, okay, gotcha,
it's really
gotcha.
long and no one ever calls it that.
So, coming out of that, is that kind of where you were able to apply that fiery faith, that impacting of youth? Is that kind of all tied into your current role? And what does the day in the life of a chaplain look like?
Yeah, I went from that Bible school camp thing. I did 10 years of parish youth ministry. So I was
Oh,
a parish
okay.
youth minister in two different parishes over the course
Hmm.
of about 10 years.
Hmm.
And that, I mean, that was a tremendous experience. Got to see couples meet and marry. Three young people that went through my youth groups are now, well, two are priests and one's a transitional deacon. Just it, yeah. Well, I've told the guys that for my own pride, I want a picture with all three of them when Deacon Jake gets ordained next spring. God willing, Deacon Jake gets ordained next spring. I want a picture with all three of them because to me, it's so cool to see how the ministry multiplies itself.
Hmm. Hmm. And
Knowing
what
knowing
does that do for your faith? Like knowing that pouring into these young men and women, and born of it are these amazing couples, these priests, transitional deacons, and obviously not necessarily in sense of pride, but like faith wise, how does that impact you?
it's it reminds me a lot of the feeding of 5,000, I would say. I brought what I had and God has multiplied it into something extraordinary. And I think one of the neat things for my own faith, what came back around when my father was dying, uh, he'd been away from the faith for a while, and I mean, I don't, he didn't, I wouldn't say that he, came back at the next dramatic moment, but the day that he died, one of these guys was the priest at the cathedral in Edmonton, and I had texted him and said, "Hey, do you mind coming to anoint my dad because he's going to die this afternoon?" And just what a neat thing it was. Again, my brother's not terribly religious, but Father Chris had played on a men's league hockey team with us. So this is the only priest in the world my brother actually knows, has any sort of a connection to. So to be able to have Father Chris, who had been a young person going through my youth ministry, a youth leader, and the one who anointed my dad, it was just such a it was a profound, a powerful moment for me, and my own faith. Just I took care of them. Now they're taking care of me. I gave. Now the Lord is making sure I've got something coming back the other way, and there was a real gift in that. It's humbling because I think of my own weaknesses. I think of the ways that I fall short, and the fact that God can do so much more. I showed up. I tried to say the little yeses and all that I did. When I got my first job as a youth minister, Tracy said to me, your role as a youth minister is to paint pictures of Jesus wherever you are. I've never forgotten that. That's really what I kind of come back to. Today, here at the high school that I'm at today, how will I
Mhm.
paint a picture of Jesus for the young people I spend time with? And then,
How do you?
oh my goodness. I mean, it's easy to look at the overt ways that you do it. So if I take students to mass, or we host a penitential service, we have a bunch of priests here and I can bring them to confession, or I run a retreat day, or I step up into class and we have a conversation. We've had a couple of my communities have been dealing with tragedies over the last few weeks, just some tragic car accidents and things. And there's a lot of why questions that come up in those moments. And being someone who can say, there is answers to the why questions, but it's also okay to just ask the why questions and not have an answer. Um, and I'll still be here with you when you're done being angry, or I'll still be with you here when you're ready to have more conversations. I mean, I've discovered I discovered very quickly in the parish, and this is something that's carried over very much into the schools, that the events and the activities are a small part of what youth ministry is. Youth ministry is largely about establishing relationships with young people. I mean, what is it that I think about with what Tracy did for me? It wasn't. I can't remember a single youth night we had, uh, but I remember the conversations I had before and after with her. I
Yeah.
can remember, the fact that she was willing to call me and give me chances to get up and be a reader and to lead this or to be in a skit, things other people wouldn't do. I remember the way that she treated. I remember trying to talk with her the first time I had girl trouble, trying to, I did, like, I like this girl, I like that girl. I didn't know what to do. And she sat
Mhm.
there and we did a whole Ignatian discernment
Oh,
form.
wow.
Like, who does that with a 15-year-old boy who's, lovesick and hormonal? But, she just sat and very patiently did it. And so she showed me Jesus in those ways. And so for me, again, it's what are the ways that I can be Jesus to somebody else? And so sometimes that's, being there for these dramatic moments. Other times, on Monday mornings, I make hot chocolate. I get up ridiculously early in the morning, come to the school, and we pass out 200 cups of hot chocolate every morning or every Monday morning. And it's just a little up for them in that day. And I, hopefully, I mean, they know who I am, they know what I do. And it's a way just of establishing that connection. And, you see what happens from there.
Yeah. So I was going to ask you, like, what does being a chaplain for youth entail? It sounds like everything. It
Yeah.
sounds like everything.
Yeah. I mean, you want to support them in their faith, obviously. I mean, it's, as a chaplain, there's a religious connotation to what that role is.
Mm,
Um, and everything I do comes from that perspective. I see, that they are a child of God, and it doesn't matter what they look like, how they talk, how they act. This is who they are, and it's my job to love them as best
mhm,
as I can, the way that Jesus would love them, and to journey with them, to walk with them. I think a few years back when they had that synod on young people in the church and vocations,
mhm,
there was a lot of conversation that Pope Francis had about walking with them, about accompaniment, the art of accompaniment. And
mhm,
required reading for anybody who's gone into youth ministry in the last, I want to say 30 years, has always been the story of Jesus on the road to Emmaus. And
mhm,
it's this discussion of how do you how do you walk with someone? Well, Jesus walked with them away from Jerusalem, even though he wanted them to be in Jerusalem. Jesus listened to their stories before he tried to tell them what was really going on. And that's, to me, that's been at the heart of my job for 26 years now. Whichever ministry I've been in, parish, school, camp, it's the chance to walk with young people. And so in a parish, you're dealing with young people who want to be there. And so
mhm.
generally they'll, I mean, yeah, there's a handful whose parents sort of force them to be there, and they it is what it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Here
Yeah.
here in a publicly funded Catholic school, we have in Alberta like you have in Ontario.
Mhm,
It's a bit more of a captive audience, and so their perspectives on faith are vastly dramatic. But the gift of a publicly funded Catholic school is that I have the chance to talk to kids about faith, about Catholicism, and about Jesus that might never ever have that conversation with anyone. And maybe it produces fruit in them in the here and now, and maybe it's the sort of thing that comes back around for them in 5 or 10 years. There are every now and then I get an email from an alumni saying, you said this thing, you maybe don't remember it, but you know I now understand what you meant, or I've been able to dig in a little bit more on that, or I never forgot it. And to me, there are hard days in these sorts of ministries, days where kids break your heart, because you see what they're doing, and you know that it's not going to do it's not gonna fill the hole they're looking to fill, at least not the way that they want it to. They're Augustine, the restless hearts. But I've got 100 stories of them on the other side where they surprise me, and this is what keeps me coming back to it day after day after day. It's crazy.
Yeah.
26 years of youth ministry.
That's amazing. That is so fantastic. The countless numbers of students you've been able to impact through these camps, and yeah, I really like that point that you bring up about publicly funded Catholic schools, and I'm a product of it. Like my family, we didn't really practice. I'm a revert. Like at 13, I just stopped going, but then suddenly had to go to public, or I suddenly had to start going to Catholic school, and it does have a lasting impact, even though it may take quite some time for some to come around to the faith. But for people like yourself, uh, that work is so important. Big shout out to Miss Wanda Plasowitz. If you ever come across this at St. Rob's, you were fantastic. Thank you for your patience.
Well, and
uh,
I could add to that because the reason I was at church that Sunday so many
mhm.
years ago, the day Tracy introduced herself, was because Phyllis Morrison, my religion teacher in grade 9, had insisted that we be there. Um,
Oh, okay.
for well, it was community service hours, so I was altar serving. I didn't really. It was the only time I ever went to church at that point in time was if I was altar serving, and it was to meet those hours that Mrs. Morrison asked of us. So there is a tie back to Catholic schools. Getting it, are they perfect places? No, but tell me a perfect place outside of heaven, and
Eh,
I,
precisely, precisely,
I don't know that I would
precisely.
believe you.
Yeah, it's people like yourself who help the youth in their formation. I know for in your formation, so that you did the school in northern Alberta, but then you at one point you decided to go get yourself a master's. You went down to Stubenville. What inspired that, and how did that impact your growth? As a man, as a husband, as a chaplain, like how did this all add to your overall growth?
Well, the Bible school that I went to was a good, like it kind of whet my appetite. It wasn't a theology school. It was you'd have a teacher for a week at a time who'd, teach you on, you know, I'll teach you on the book of Revelation. That was what Cardinal Collins came and taught us a week on Revelation. That was his expertise. Someone else came and taught us kind of a week on church history. Well, how much church history can you really go over in a week of classes? 20 centuries of history in a week. It's a really quick overview. Here's a week on prayer. Here's a week on this or that or the other thing. And I
Hmm.
remember thinking when I started in the parish, so, I'm 22 years old, I'm brand new in my parish. Like I've got my Bible, I've got my catechism. What else do I really need? And my pastor, Father John Hess, he's 93 now.
Oh wow!
He's coming up on, God willing, we're going to get to celebrate his 70th anniversary as a priest in about a year and a half here, which
Wow!
is just the man. I don't think he has the internet, so he'll probably never see this. But the man, it just kind of lives, radiates of sanctity. Um,
Mm.
I don't know that he'll ever be canonized, but it's probably one of the closest I've ever come to being around somebody I'm pretty sure has all the qualities that you would expect from a saint.
That is beautiful.
Um, Father John was incredibly supportive. He's the one who gave me my first youth ministry job in a parish.
Hmm.
And I got through my first year, and then a conversation came up about, all right, what are you going to do to know more? And he talked about the fact that he learned a lot from doing. Yes, he did his seminary, but he learned a lot from doing, but also saw great value in going to study. So between himself and Cardinal Collins, who was by this time the Archbishop of Edmonton, they convinced me to go to Newman Theological College, which is our local. It's the college attached to our local seminary, but also offers lay formation. And they basically paid my way through a Bachelor of Theology. Uh, and and when I got to Holy Trinity, my second parish, Bishop Paul Terrio, who was my pastor at the time, uh, convinced me to keep going. So that was where I picked up the masters from Franciscan. I hummed and hawed about doing because I could have done an MDiv at Newman, which would have been wonderful and I would have learned a lot. But at the time, it was a lot of the same professors I'd taken from my undergrad, and I wanted to sort of broaden things. And
Absolutely.
Steubenville has a great distance ed program,
Hmm.
which had a residency requirement, so I did have to go down to Steubenville. But I got to do things, and it was very compatible with the ebbs and flows of parish ministry, which can be crazy at
Hmm.
certain seasons, and then really, really quiet at certain seasons. January in youth ministry is not a terribly busy time because all your high school students are writing exams.
Mm,
Um,
gotcha,
you know,
gotcha.
July and August in a non-World Youth Day year can be as busy or as quiet as you kind of make them.
Hmm.
And so I had lots of opportunities to kind of do the work with the ebbs and flows of the youth ministry year, and ended up, yeah, somehow the guy who thought he needed a Bible and a catechism now has 2 degrees hanging on the wall. Uh, and,
That's
and I think
awesome.
I think what those taught me more than anything is two things. Is one, how much I don't know. Studying theology taught me how much I don't know. I think I'm much more aware of that than I was when I was 22, when I started in the parish. When I was 22, I'm like,
Yeah.
I got a Bible and a catechism. I know everything, bring it on, ask me anything. I can take it all. Now I'm much more aware of the fact that having 2 degrees, there's so much more that I don't know. I could do 4 more degrees and still not even scratch the surface of the richness of our faith. But the other thing that it taught me was where to look for the answers. And I think that has been one of the great treasures that I've taken with me into ministry since I got these degrees is when a young person drops a hard question on me, I'm not sort of thinking there, all right, I'm not just going to Google for the answers. I've got resources, I've got sources, I've got connections, I've got people I can ask. A couple of years back, I had students stump me with a question about Lilith as Adam's first wife, and I'd never heard of this before. And the more research I did, the more I got into like weird, I couldn't find anything solid. So I reached out to one of the scripture professors at Newman College, and he went and did some reading into his own stuff and found me a good answer for what my students were looking to find out.
Yeah. What was the question? What was the answer? Now you've got me on the edge of my seat.
So Lilith, and I'd forgotten this. Lilith is it's implied that Lilith is Lewis includes her in the Chronicles of Narnia. It's Adam's first wife,
Hmm.
and then she runs off, and there's all sorts of commentary about that. Lilith is referenced once in Scripture in it's either the Psalms or one of the prophets, but basically Lilith is the boogeyman in ancient
Oh.
Judaism. Lilith is the basically it's a demon that if kids misbehaved, you were at risk of being abducted by this demon Lilith or something like that. Um, but there's Lewis was building on this tradition that Adam had, when God creates in Genesis 1 and he creates man and woman, and then he creates Eve at the end of Genesis 2, that this is a continuation of the same story. So that
Mm.
God essentially created two women. Now this, like, theologically, this doesn't make any sense. You look at theology of the body, it's you're taking too literal of a read of of those early chapters of Genesis. But it gave rise to this whole legend of Lilith, and Sarah McLachlan and her Lilith Fair, was a little bit of a play off of this. Like there's a lot of sort of pop culture references. Again, Lewis's tie, I believe Jadis the White Witch from Narnia is supposed to be Lilith. They're supposed to be somehow tied as a descendant of Lilith or something like that. I have to go back and read it again. But Dr. Saulnier found the reference, found the, what are sort of the rabbinical interpretations of this particular passage. And basically it's all right, this is one of those things that kind of floats around but doesn't have any real grounding in a proper scriptural understanding of these verses. The idea that Lilith is this other wife of Adam, because that's essentially what they were asking was, do you know about
Gotcha.
the other wife of Adam? And it's like, well,
Okay.
no, Lilith in this old Judaism would be this demon. It's a name for a demon that,
Hmm.
behave yourself, kids, or else. Just like people have used the boogeyman
Yeah.
in more Western cultures.
Yeah. Well, that's really interesting. Just the youth, like when they get together, the things they discuss, and what they bring to you, and just how they'll keep you on your toes. I'm curious to know if this past summer with World Youth Day, uh, were you able to participate? Were you able to bring a group of youth out there to Lisbon, or?
No, actually, I took on a different project in my diocese over the last
Oh,
couple of years, and
okay.
we had, prior to COVID, we owned two summer camps in my archdiocese, Our Lady Victory Camp and Camp Encounter, and
Hmm.
they had been sort of closed for a review and a revitalization in 2019 with a plan to sort of reopen them in the summer of 2020. Well,
And then something happened.
something happened that
Yeah.
we shall not name, but yeah, basically those plans got scuttled, and
Mm.
the camps sat for 2019, they sat for 2020, they sat for 2021. And I reached out to some priests that I know and said, what do we need to do to make sure that they don't sit for 2022? So
Mhm.
it was funny because, well, the Pope was getting ready to, or the day the Pope landed in Edmonton in the summer of 2022, we were opening our first week of provisional summer camps. Our sites, because they'd sat for so long, weren't usable. So we rented the camp from the Eparchy in Edmonton and ran
Mhm.
3 weeks of summer camps, trying to kickstart the program. And that meant that almost my entire 2023 has been dedicated to getting our camp ministry established again. So
Mhm.
sadly, we had to close Camp Encounter permanently and put all of our eggs into the other Our Lady Victory Camp basket.
Mhm.
But while everybody else was going to World Youth Day, I was pulling the strings behind the scenes and directing our archdiocesan summer camp.
Mhm.
Um,
So did it officially launch this past summer, or is it 2024 that we're gonna
no,
see
we
the
we
inaugural
reopened.
summer?
Archbishop Smith came out and had an opening mass and blessed the camp on the 8th of July, and we had 280 kids go through camp this summer over
That's
4 weeks.
amazing.
Basically, we were sold out, but actually both summers we were basically sold out. Uh, we ran at capacity, and it's like I said, this was such a big piece of my, I look back, again, where did I
Mhm.
go? I went from youth group, I went to camp, I went to Bible school, I went back to camp. Uh, this was kind of the forming ground where I got my first chances to give talks, where I got my, playing guitar every night around the campfire every summer. That's, where I got confidence for guitar and things like that. So
Mhm.
wanted to have that place not only for other young adult leaders to grow in their ministry skills, but also I've got 3 kids that are camp aged right now, and they all went to camp for a week or two this summer, and
Okay.
was a real boon to their faith, which when camp ministry I think is done well does that. It
Hmm.
edifies what they're hearing in their youth groups or what they're hearing in their families because you're meeting other kids again who are working in that same direction, which in
Hmm.
some of the smaller farming communities in Alberta might be a little bit harder to find if you're the only family with young people in it
Hmm. Yeah,
or
yeah.
you're the only one in your school.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really interesting. That's awesome that your that's awesome that your children were able to come to camp and also kind of see you in action. Like I'm I'm going to be married the beginning of 2024, and obviously we're hoping for children, and if we're blessed with that, I'm I guess I have to pick your brain on how you've been able to keep your children engaged, and also, what that must be like for them to see their dad leading the youth. Because we all kind of look back at maybe our pops, and it's like, he's not cool, he's not cool. But then you see one's father in like the context of their life, and you're just like, oh wow, this guy's pretty cool. He does awesome stuff. How I know that's a lot of questions all in one, but what if you could give me your thoughts on that?
Well, my kids have grown up with me working in ministry. I mean,
Mm.
they in some ways have been, the Catholic equivalent of a pastor's kid. If you went to different other denominations where
Yeah,
this is
yeah.
just part of what you live, part of what life is like. When I was younger and worked in the parish, we would have, a gathering right around Christmas time with my youth leaders. We'd have, different groups of people that would just be around. Their first babysitters were all people who came through my youth group. Uh, Things like that. So they've kind of breathed it. Now that they're
Mm.
in the schools, they're actually four of my five are in classes that I visit on a regular basis.
Oh,
So
okay.
this is, they see, they have no choice but to see me in action at times. But I think for us, what's been really important for keeping our kids tied to the faith has been obviously family prayer. And my
Mm.
wife is, she's very much the heartbeat of that. I think like a lot of homes, that's the heart. She's the heartbeat. She doesn't forget. I could be caught up in trying to finish this or that or the other thing. I'm like, I just need 15 more minutes to write this thing or to answer this thing. Like, no, we need to pray and we need to pray with the kids now. And
Mm.
she'll send the kids to come get me because I'm not saying no to them for prayer. Obviously, we go to mass as a family as much as possible. If I happen to be away, they know I'm going to mass.
Mm.
Advice we heard years ago was, I'm around priests all the time, so I don't need to go to confession when the kids go to confession because I can get to confession. I just I work with priests on a
Yeah.
regular basis. If I need
Yeah.
I grab them, I go to confession. But someone suggested it was really important that your kid looks up and sees you in line with them to go to confession. Now, with five kids and two of us, seven of us going to confession, we often just book a family confession time rather than going and standing in line because we could dwarf the whole hour of confession on a Saturday afternoon pretty quickly with seven of us.
Yeah. Yeah.
But again, we'll all go and we'll all sit together, and you just kind of everybody's going in and out. They know dad's in line with them. So seeing that these are kind of normal, expected things, that's one part.
Mm.
The community that we bring around us. I mean, most of my closest friends are people that I've worked with or done ministry with, or way back when went to youth group with. So they're people, our family friends are generally people that they see around the church too. Whether it's at a church retreat, a family conference, at camp. It's funny how many of us parents were all dropping, who are people I went to youth group with, we're all dropping our kids off for camp at the same time this summer. And,
Yeah.
that was a kind of a good, here we go, next generation. And my daughter, she's going to graduate this year. She'll be a team member and she'll be, the generations that go back and forth with this.
That's beautiful.
So, it's the little things. It's the little
Mm.
things. The fact that I think the kids know this is just part of life as we know
Mm.
it.
Mm.
Our kids are all avid readers, and I actually credit a lot of that to the fact that my older two were kind of coming of age to start reading while I was working on my master's. So if I'm home, I'm generally, I had 80 or 100 pages to read every day. So
Mm.
what did they see me doing in the afternoons and the evenings? They didn't see me, watching hockey or football. They didn't see me, sitting trying to watch stuff on YouTube. They saw me reading. I was reading theology. They were reading, you know, Sandra Boynton, but
Yeah.
it was reading nonetheless. And it's kind of interesting how that has become just part of the culture of our family. All of my kids read. My 7-year-old figured out how to read in the last year, and they'll read for 45 minutes an hour before they go to bed. Some of them would read right until midnight if we let them.
Oh wow, that's amazing. That's amazing.
But because it was part of the culture of what they grew up in,
Yeah.
it's part of what they do.
Hmm.
And so that's, I think when it comes to faith, that's part of what we've tried to instill in our home and in our family. And then when these opportunities come up, there's lots of times, I'm tired, I've been doing ministry all day, or I've been out doing this or the other thing. And like, we have to take them out to stuff. We can't just insulate them and just keep them at home. They need to see that faith is not just something that happens in the walls of our house or in the sanctuary of our church, but being in groups of other people who are living this and loving this. Last year, as things opened up again, we started taking them to, we have a Madonna house, a satellite house for Madonna House.
What's that?
It's called the Marian Center. Madonna House is an apostolate founded by Catherine Doherty. My website is Mike is Third, which is a blatant ripoff of something Catherine Doherty wrote, where she's like, the life of faith is really, I'm third, God's first, my neighbor's second, I am third. And then there's some of the most wonderful, humble, holy people that I've ever met are these people from the Madonna House community. Basically devote themselves totally to the faith, live totally on the providence of God. And in Edmonton, their apostolate is they serve meals to the homeless and they care for the homeless. And so we started
Mm.
going and volunteering there, every month or every couple of months. I went out there a couple of times last year. It's interesting watching how my 14-year-old, who most of the time would rather just be playing video games or talking about hockey or just typical 14-year-old boy,
Hmm.
you know, this was a whole new world for him. And again, how do you make those moments, those acts of service, a part of your daily lived, your family culture? So just make it normal. That would
Yeah.
be my biggest thing. Faith is normal at home and everywhere else.
Yeah.
And I love when we watch shows and people take the Lord's name in vain. He always responds with "God bless you." Like, this is my 14-year-old, and I'm pretty sure even at school here, when he hears people curse in the hallways, under his breath, he's saying a little prayer for them. Something my wife has passed on in the culture of our family to my kids.
Oh, that's beautiful, and I'm taking all the notes for this. It's
Well, I mean, the proof will be in
super
the pudding. We'll
important.
see here in 10 years. Did we do a good job when they're
Yeah,
not under our roof anymore? I mean, that's
yeah, yeah. Do a recap. Do a recap. Where are they now?
it's something we pray for. I'm certainly praying for
Yeah.
every day. So.
Absolutely, absolutely. Only want the best for them. You mentioned Mike is third, your website, and I love that premise of God first, neighbor second, and yourself third. And through your site, you have a lot of different facets of the work that you do. Why was it important for yourself to kind of put these resources out there, showing the different works that you do? Why was that important for you?
Uh, well, initially, when I started in the schools, we had Edmonton Catholic schools had a chaplain who was kind of one of those larger than life characters, Father Mike Moreau, Father Catfish, and he he served. I mean, Edmonton Catholic is a much bigger district than mine is. He's got
Mm.
like 50 or 60, or he had 50 or 60 schools, and there was no way for him to be in every one of those buildings every week and to be connected with those kids. So he would post, video rants and little writings and little notes of them and post his Sunday homilies and things like that for,
Hmm.
just as an encouragement, go, this homily doesn't replace you going to your own mass, but here's what I talked about this weekend, and he put that disclaimer in lots of the videos, and it occurred to me that that was a really good way to do things was, I've got 10 schools. There's 5 different communities. I only get out to some of them, every 6 weeks, by the time I cycle through seeing everybody. And I wanted to make sure that they knew there was a way to find me. Um, and in order, I mean, it is the 21st century. I could have just, here's my Facebook, here's my Instagram, here's things like that. There
Hmm.
are some policies in division, just safe policies, safety policies for me and for them, where they don't necessarily want me friending every young person in every social media venue. So you put up
Hmm.
a website, well, anybody can get that. Doesn't matter what social media platform you're on, anybody can get to that. And
Yeah.
so, I'd write things there, but largely it was a tool to stay connected to them. When
Hmm.
COVID hit and we went totally online, and I stopped going to all these schools and I stopped seeing all of these kids, uh, that was when I learned how to do video, how to edit video, how to put some things together. And it's funny looking back in May of 2020, the first video series that I really kind of sunk my teeth into. I did a Bible study in the Gospel of John, where like every day in May I did another passage from John, and
Hmm.
I didn't know about white balance and certain things for videography. And so you watch some of the videos and I'm just like, it's painful, because there's a couple times where the camera was like on an auto filter setting, and I have this pink hue because I was wearing a red shirt, or I have a green hue because I was wearing a green shirt because the
Yeah.
filter in the
Yeah.
camera wasn't set properly. I've, mercifully learned a little bit more about lighting and things in the time since.
Hmm.
But it was a way for the kids who have faith to stay connected. It was a way for the kids who wanted to explore faith to stay connected. And then that's evolved into, I do a 5-minute video every week or two now that gets shared with different classes. And it's sometimes it's more serious. Sometimes I'm just ridiculously goofy and I sing karaoke or, something like that in the midst of it, make a fool of myself. But it's
Mm-hmm.
meant to be a way to bridge the distance.
Mm-hmm.
Because like I said before, youth ministry is relationships. I mean, you could argue all ministry is relationships. I think you make a fair argument about that, but I'll speak
Yeah.
for the ministry I know something about. Um, and I want them to see me
Mm-hmm.
as someone they can reach out to. I want them to hear from me more often than I'm physically able to do. And so these digital means have been just that. In the earlier days, it was a lot more posting on a Facebook page. Well, none of my young people are on Facebook anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
even, then there was a little bit of a morph to Instagram. Well, the percentage of them on Instagram is not what it once was. And I took a look at TikTok and decided that was not somewhere I wanted to be. So YouTube is the place where I'm spending my time now.
Yeah.
And, they know where I am. They know where to find me.
Mm-hmm.
And the hope is, and it has been the case at times they will reach out the other way.
Mm-hmm.
Or when I show up in 6 weeks, they've heard from me 3 times in between.
Yeah, yeah. Well, on your site with all the resources that are made available, what would you say is like the most popular one, maybe top two resources that people, that the youth have been using?
I did back in 2013. I redid it last year, but I did a whole series of written reflections on the UCAT, where I took all the main headings from the Youth Catechism and went through and said, here's how to understand all of these things. And so I actually redid all of them last year, and the Archdiocese of Edmonton actually published them on as a part of their weekly newsletter to parishes.
That's
Published the whole
awesome.
series with
Yeah.
the revised series for me. So I'd say
Hmm.
that one is a resource if you want to know the faith. That's one that I always, like this is here. You get a religion sign about anything that has to do with Catholicism. You can probably find an article about it in this site.
Hmm.
So that's one. And then these 5-minute videos that's kind of the main thing I'm doing right now. I'm not doing nearly as much writing as I was before because youth don't read blogs. Youth watch videos. Youth
Yes.
watch video excerpts. Um, and so it's trying to have something that's bite sized,
Hmm.
but that's relevant
Hmm.
that perspective. So I don't ever see myself in the sphere of somebody like Father Mike Schmitz and his Ascension Presents videos and things like that. But if if a handful of the young people are watching the views, the views are a little bit misleading in the sense that
Hmm.
I know that these are being shown in 25 or 30 religion classes every week. So
Hmm.
the force multi or the multiplying effect of that of 25 kids in 30 classes seeing it. Well, that's a proportion of my student body that I'm connecting to. So I'd say the
Yeah.
videos and the UCAT articles would be the two big ones.
Oh, yeah. That makes sense. Through all of this, through this journey with youth, building up the camp, building up your family and the spiritual life of your children, how has all of this impacted your faith as you see it now? From that 15-year-old who had that initial seed planted to where you are now, how has your faith been impacted?
Oh, it's not just about me anymore. I think when I first came to faith, it was very much about me. I'm here because they have to take me. I'm here because I might get a girlfriend. I'm here because I need a family. I'm here. It was all about me. In a lot
Mm-hmm.
of it became about him, but it was all about me. Having others I am responsible to and I'm responsible for is a reminder that it's not about me. And so on a morning where maybe I don't want to get up and pray, or I sleep in and I missed my regular prayer time, I still got to do it. I got to go and find a moment to go and take quiet time. If it was just about me, well, whatever. It's like I slept in and I missed the workout. Well, that's just something that really only benefits me, so I'll miss the workout. But I have a couple of times heard in confession from priests when I talk about struggles being consistent in prayer. What a tragedy would it be if a young person came to you looking for Jesus and only found you? And it's one of those things I think of often when I don't want to pray or I don't feel like praying or I don't want to keep doing some of these things. It's not just about me anymore. And obviously, I can only control me. I can only control my actions. I can't control my own kids. I certainly can't control other people's kids.
Mm-hmm.
But being a man who grows in virtue, being a man who resists temptation, being a man who tries to grow closer to God, being someone who tries to be able to understand and explain these things more clearly and more completely. Why would you study and not just not just the Bible and the Catechism and the stuff I want to read for fun? Because it's not about me anymore. If I'm accepting this call to be a minister of some sort, obviously not an ordained minister, but I have a ministry, it is a responsibility of mine to keep growing. And I think the other piece that I've discovered is that the Lord is so generous and so good. I give and he's there. And my wife and I, we've been married 18 and a half years now. And we were talking a little while ago about how much we thought that was love at the beginning. And it was.
Yeah.
But there's the image that Lewis writes at the end of the Chronicles of Narnia when they're basically when they're in Aslan's country, farther up and farther in, and things become more real, more substantial. Beauty is more beautiful, depth is deeper, colors are richer, like everything is more. That has certainly been my experience of marriage. That has absolutely been my experience of faith. I loved Jesus when I was 15. But if you tried to compare the love I had for Jesus at 15 with what I know of him now at 43, I don't think you could measure one against the other. Even when I was 22, when I was 32, when I started this role as chaplain, it's different now. And I would hope that's something that my kids would catch by osmosis and more deliberately, both my own biological kids and the young people that I serve. Jesus is more real to me now than he was when I was 15. He came off the page then, but it's it's like flipping from black and white to color. I don't know. I could use a lot of metaphors here, but there's more there. And again, it's like the theology studies. I know how much I don't know. I'm aware of how much further I could grow and how much closer I could get to him.
Yeah.
And that's the journey, right? That's the pilgrimage.
Yeah. That's a beautiful perspective, beautiful way of seeing it. Yeah, that's beautifully expressed. I can't thank you enough for sharing that depth that you've experienced in faith and in love and in marriage and fatherhood and all these different facets of being a good Catholic man. What advice do you feel that you could pass on for others who are, all the viewers and listeners who are trying to find ways to live out their faith through their work and through their life?
I would say, and to borrow from Catherine Doherty again, it is a gift to be called to work in ministry, but ministry is not. It's not the only, or not even the best way to try and live out your faith. Catherine Doherty often writes about the duty, what she calls the duty of the moment. What is your duty of the moment? And she writes about mothers who have diapers to change or dishes to wash, men who have to go off and do work. I mean, she's writing to a specific culture, obviously, and men can stay home and do diapers, and women can go off and have careers and things like that. But whatever it is that you're doing, if it's reading a story to your small child, if it's getting up to do a job that you hate, but this is how you feed your family, if it's getting up for mass on Sunday, on a cold Sunday, and making sure the car is warmed up, doing the duty of the moment, doing the thing that God calls you to, because I think that all of us are called to this incredible depth of relationship with Jesus and to radiate him. And it's easy to get caught in the weeds and caught in the wrong things where, if only things were like this, if only things were like that, and miss Jesus in the present moment. I think he can be found in all of it. I have good friends who work in all sorts of careers, realtors, management for different companies, engineers. And I think it is as possible to discover Christ in those places as it is in a place. I just get to talk about him, which means I would say I have less excuse. All the times that I've said I'm too busy for prayer, I feel like when I get face to face with the Lord, he's going to show me all the times I walked by the chapel on the way to the photocopier. I have no excuse. But just because I have Jesus in a chapel doesn't mean that I have a monopoly on Jesus in my career. So wherever you're coming from, if you're somebody who gets a chance to work in ministry, embrace the privilege, the fact that daily mass and prayer and other things like that can be part of your life and your routine. That's a gift. If you work in a secular workforce, still find Jesus there, and do whatever it is that you're called to do, with the greatest love that you can, because you radiate Jesus in those actions, in those ways, and your kids will see in the ways that you get up and you go to work every day, out of love for them, out of love for the Lord. They'll see that faithfulness demonstrated in 1,000 different ways.
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful and super, super wise. Mike, thank you so much for everything you've given to me, to us. I can't express enough thanks, but I'll try and say thank you so much. God bless your ministry and God bless you.
It's a pleasure. Thank you very much, Jermaine.